welcome back to the Prosperous Empath. Kat here. I always enjoy having friends and colleagues who I've known for a while join me on the show because I notice that they so often result in just these instantly deep conversations where we just kind of dive in. And today is just that. I'm really honored and excited to have a dear friend and esteemed colleague of mine, Saleema Vellani, join me on the show. Saleema is someone that I've known since living in Washington, D.C., and really from the early days of business. She's attended my authentic relating retreats. She's attended the monthly non-networking Ask and Give circles, which have since become the non-networking power hours when I used to host them in my home in Washington, D.C. She's been a huge champion and advocate for me in launching this podcast, in authoring my book, Belonging, Overcome Your Inner Critic and Reclaim Your Joy. And I've gotten to support her as well by attending her events and some of her speaking opportunities in DC. And it's just been really beautiful to be a part of each other's entrepreneurship journeys. And I feel really honored to have her on the show today because she's going to be sharing a part of her entrepreneurship journey and specifically a recent experience with burnout that she's never shared before. And it's actually a story that I've never heard before either. So we're both hearing it for the first time. So before we dive into a little bit more about what we're going to explore on the show today, I want to share with you a little bit about Saleema because she's quite accomplished. She's a 9-time founder with 3 exits and the award-winning author of the best-selling book, Innovation Starts with I. She's the founder and CEO of Ripple Impact, which helps seasoned professionals and corporate exiters build profitable, purpose-driven portfolio career businesses and pursue their dreams. She invests in women-owned early-stage startups, sits on the board of the National Speakers Association in DC, and she teaches entrepreneurship at Johns Hopkins University. She holds an MA from Johns Hopkins University and a bachelor's in arts from McGill University, and she's been featured in Forbes and endorsed by Ariana Huffington, Seth Godin, Adam Grant, and Dan Pink. She speaks 5 languages and has traveled to well over 100 countries. And she is truly a generous spirit and soul inside and out. Something I'm really grateful about in today's conversation is just how vulnerable Saleema is willing to get in sharing her story and really her recent entrepreneurship story and how it led her down the path of burnout upon building a 7-figure business and what she learned on the other side of that and how she's really incorporated those lessons and broken through. We are going to hear all about her recent experience with burnout, which honestly was something I didn't even know that she'd experienced. She shares all about the importance of knowing what you can and can't tolerate to proactively avoid physical and mental burnout. We dive into some of the ways in which we can recognize how our own empathic tendencies contribute to burnout, such as the people pleasing and not being able to say no, and what you can practice instead. And then we explore something that feels really relevant for me, and it's a quality that I've always appreciated about Saleema in particular, and it's how to manage your generosity as an empathpreneur, and how do you simultaneously scale your business while doing it in a way that is aligned with who you are and how you want to show up in the business world. Finally, we explore leveraging your gifts, making values-aligned decisions, and serving people without running yourself dry in the process. Now, it is a super vulnerable conversation, and I think that's something I really appreciate about Saleema in particular, is how willing she is to share her own personal journey. And I think that that's the quality of someone who's truly done their own work, someone who has truly embodied their own personal growth journey to become a prosperous empath. Because when we can take our own experiences and embody and learn from what we overcome, that is how we can truly become a prosperous empath and share from a super clear and distinguished and embodied place. I hope you enjoyed today's conversation. Let's dive in. Hello and welcome to the Prosperous Empath podcast, designed especially for empaths and highly sensitive entrepreneurs just like you who are committed to achieving holistic success. I'm your host, Catherine Wood, Master Certified Coach, author, mastermind leader, and founder of Unbounded Potential, a boutique coaching firm for empathic entrepreneurs. I'm on a mission to bring empathy back into the world of business. Each episode will focus on achieving more by doing less through leveraging empath-friendly leadership practices, boundaries, rituals, and systems, all the while continuing to care deeply about ourselves, others, and the world around us. If you are committed to joyful living and running a conscious business, but amassing wealth while doing so, proving that you can have both in a society that tells you you can't, then you are in the right place. Join me here each week to find out how. Be sure to subscribe and leave a review so you won't miss an episode. Plus, you'll find all the show notes and helpful resources over at unbounded-potential.com. Saleema, I feel like we've been attempting to record this conversation for maybe years now, because I think you were one of the people in my life who told me I should start a podcast before I was ready. So honored to have you with me today. Excited to have you here.
Thank you. Thanks for having me on your show.
I feel like this is going to be such a wonderful conversation because we have so many years of knowing one another and kind of watching each other's journeys at different chapters of the way. And I'm really excited to hear more about yours, the ones that I kind of was a closer witness to when we both lived in DC. And since myself having moved to Boston, all the ones that I don't know so intimately. So by way of getting us started, I'd love for you to share your pronouns, and I'd love for you to introduce yourself by way of your story. I think we always learn best through stories.
Sure. Thank you. So hi, everyone. My name is Saleema Vellani. My pronouns, she, her, hers. And I'm originally from Canada, from Toronto, live in Washington, DC, which is where I met Kat, which is now home for me. After living around the world between Brazil, Italy, Dominican Republic, Mexico, and I speak a bunch of languages: Spanish, Portuguese, Italian, French, and I just very much feel like a world citizen that has really seen a lot, lived a lot in different places, different cultures. And for me, I would say my life mission is to really help entrepreneurs, specifically. I'm really drawn to women. I help all sorts of entrepreneurs, regardless of gender, but essentially people who are really trying to make an impact, who are really trying to feel energized by what they do and feel like they're really living their purpose, and really want to make an impact on other people and make a few $100,000 a year while doing that, and monetize their value, productize themselves, and essentially have a portfolio career business. And so that they could, because they're passionate about different things, how can we monetize and package and price the different things that we love and that we're good at, so that we can truly just be ourselves authentically, be creative, and live the lives that we want.
I love that. I'm just appreciating some of the bites of wisdom that you've offered me and pushed me to consider over the years, because we've known each other for going on almost 8 years now. And, I remember you telling me that I need to facilitate more. I need to work on my public speaking. You and I have talked so much about systems, about the podcast, about writing a book. And it's been fun to kind of see the ways in which you just naturally mentor people and offer support and connections and introductions. And then the way you've really leveraged that into your business model, which is something I'm really excited to dive in with you today, because I feel like I saw your business kind of in the early years, and it's kind of exploded and flopped, and it sounds like grown again since then. And it's been really such an honor to witness on the sidelines and I don't think everyone has done a lot of the personal growth work that folks like you and I have done in order to be able to share and willing to share about the journey. Um, so maybe we'll start there. Like, I'd love to hear from your perspective. Like, what was your growth journey like from 5 to 7 figures? Like, what's it been like?
Yeah, thanks for sharing. And yeah, I have a lot of respect for you because it's just been great seeing you grow and just watching each other even from a distance or the sidelines. It's just been really empowering and inspiring. So thanks for doing the work that you do. I feel like we're on this journey together. But yeah, the growth journey, interesting. I think we often think of it like we think about it in like chronologically, right? But really, when the business is very much you, or you are the product, or the business can't exist without you because it's very much aligned with who you are and your purpose and your values. For me, I would say I was scraping around the bottom for a very long time. Before I started my current company, I was like a 5-figure business for a long time because I just didn't know how to how to do what I did when I was younger. I had a lot of success when I was 22, 23, started a translation business in Italy, just online out of a crisis. I didn't even know it was a business. I didn't even know it was called entrepreneurship. There was no community of sorts I was in. I didn't know anything about that. So when I started my journey, it was because I graduated into a crisis and I just didn't know what to do other than use the skills and resources that I had, which were languages. And so way back then, we went from 0 to 6 figures within a few months, which was really interesting because it was just about figuring out how do we help people, what's the market, being adaptive to the market and understanding the trends and where we could be unique and how do we, bring in our unique value proposition and have a secret sauce and all of that. And I wasn't really thinking about it in those terms back then because I was just doing and acting on instinct and very much a visionary without knowing that that's who I was or who I was going to become. And so interestingly, I had a lot of success when I was younger. And then when I moved to the US to go to graduate school and get the dream job that I had dreamt about getting, and my parents had pushed me to, get a stable job. And that really wasn't I didn't know that that was not going to be my path. I ended up learning about entrepreneurship and realizing how popular and how trendy and how cool it was here in the US. And that's when I started learning a lot more about entrepreneurship. I started teaching entrepreneurship. But for many, many, many years, probably close to a decade, I didn't know how to really do it again. And so it was like, how did I do this when I was younger? And now with all this education and experience, how come I can't do it again? And how come I'm teaching it to other people, but it's not aligning with me because I'm not doing it and I'm not as successful as I used to be. And so that I struggled with for many years. And that's when I met you, Kat, I was like, how did I do it before? How am I teaching it? And why can't I do it again? And it was really hard. And I think ultimately, as you said, there's a lot of personal work it's a lot of mindset work that you have to do, a lot of work on yourself. And that's why my book, it's called Innovation Starts with I. It's very much about doing that self-innovation work. Because if your business is very much you or you're doing a business where it's like your knowledge or you're the service or whatever, you're the person that's executing, it very much has to align with you. But if you're not evolving or you're not investing in yourself in a way that's helping you evolve so you can provide more value and you can, you can actually grow and your business will grow because you're growing. Your business can't grow if you're not growing. And so for many, many years, I was doing bits and pieces and I was investing in myself a little bit and trying to grow here and there, but not now. I really truly know what it means to invest in oneself and to really grow. I didn't know that back then. And so I was scraping around the bottom. They always say when you go down, you got to go back up. But for me, I was at the bottom for a very long time. And many of you probably know what that feels like when you're just like, I feel like I'm in a hole. It's like I've made some strides, but like I still feel like I'm not where I need to be. And so then I had to sort of do a reset and reevaluate my life. And at that point, it was COVID happened. There was just everyone was reinventing themselves. I was already writing a book on reinvention. And that's when I really, decided not to keep doing what I was doing because I got some advice that, hey, like it doesn't seem to make sense from a business model standpoint. I used to do a lot of innovation work and design thinking workshops, and the industry had changed and become saturated. It just was not as I wasn't as sticky as I used to be in terms of like in demand, because it just became so saturated, and things go in and out of trends, right? And so the market had shifted, and it was actually interesting, Kat, because I just remembered that one thing I did, and I didn't consider it market research at the time, but I had my assistant at the time reach out to you and some of my friends and be like, hey, like, what is Saleema really good at? What would you hire her for, or pay her for? And like, what do you like? Just tell me more about like how you see Saleema. And it was interesting because I started to just, I was like, I can't do this all myself. And I need somebody to like go and find out more information about me, because I had a lot of blinders on, and I thought that I needed to be this person. I thought that I was good at this. I thought I was the design thinking expert and whatever. And I had to work with organizations, and that's just the way it had to be. But after getting insights from you and some of my friends, my assistant had come back to me and said, Saleema, like, no one mentioned that they'd hire you for design thinking. No one said that they would, bring you on for innovation work. They said that, they love the way that you built a personal brand. They love the way you engage and build community. They're impressed that you're getting a TEDx talk or growing your LinkedIn platform, or they love the entrepreneur in you and like how you're able to really give great advice. And it was like, really? I was like, you can't make money off of entrepreneurs. Come on, like this is not going to work. And so for a while, I had to kind of was like, no, this is not going to work. And I think, Kat, you were in that space starting out as well. And there were many people trying to do that. And I was like, I don't think this can work. Like this just, it's not scalable. And finally, I was like, you know what, Saleema, if you're going to, you can't just do this yourself. It's a lonely journey. And most entrepreneurs fail because they think that, their brilliance got them here and they think that they're going to take themselves there. But no, it's your team that's going to help empower. You need to really have a team that's going to help you see beyond where you want to go and help you get to where you want to go. And it was listening to the advice from my assistant and a couple other people who were like, Saleema, like, you should help entrepreneurs and don't come to corporate. Don't do whatever you're doing, like help entrepreneurs. That's when I decided to really make that work. And I said, you know what, I'm going to trust that this is like, I'm passionate about this. This is what I'm meant to do. I'm going to do it and it will sort itself out. And I think from there, when I really followed my gut and my intuition, and thank you for asking that, because I feel like I haven't really told the story being where I am now. I've told it from the earlier stages of when I started out, but yeah, I didn't know that it was going to blow up into a 7-figure business. I didn't know that it was going to get to this point this fast. I didn't know that just following my intuition but again, it's not just that. There's a lot of other things, but essentially really following what I felt I needed to do and my purpose, it would all manifest in it. And it did manifest in many ways beautifully, but also you really want to, there's a lot of things that you need to know or think about as an entrepreneur, because it can't just be, it's not just, I could be a bit woo-woo and I'm a fairly spiritual person, but it's not just about manifesting. Like you actually have to know how to lead a business and know what your strengths are, know what you really, really suck at. Like, what are your weaknesses? And making sure that you fill those gaps with people that can fill those weaknesses. And so, yeah, it was just a really interesting journey that I went on because we grew a lot faster. The goals that we had for end of 2024, we reached them in end of 2022. And it was beautiful. The growth was beautiful. We celebrated. We hosted a huge party. I had like 60 people. We went from 10 people to 60 people on the team. It looked great, but inside, I didn't see that the foundation wasn't there. The systems weren't set up. The team wasn't it wasn't the right team that I needed to take the business to where I needed to go. I wasn't the right leader. I didn't know how to lead that team. I didn't know how to show up and really empower, inspire, and give feedback to people. Like there were just a lot of things that I didn't know how to grow the people. And so ultimately, we grew, but we also fell right back down, like flat. And it was really hard because I had a lot of single points of failure. I had burnt out. I had a crisis that went on for a very long time, for about a year, where just a lot of things failed and a lot of problems all around because we grew too fast. And some people saw that coming, but I was too optimistic and too idealist, thinking that the universe will take care of me. And it just didn't happen that way. So I try to set everything up, but again, I see things so differently now, having been through that journey. But yeah, I mean, it was a pretty tough time. I didn't know what burnout was until I experienced it. Mentally, health, like my physical feeling of like feeling burnt out, the stress in my shoulders, like the feelings of like, just like, I don't want to exist anymore because I just can't handle this. Like, I don't want to live anymore. Like there were some really dark times And it's lonely. It's so lonely because nobody can understand what you're going through. And you have to you feel like you have to show up a certain way to your team. You feel like you have to show up a certain way to your client. But deep inside, I was broken. And this is the first time I'm sort of telling people about this publicly. But yeah, it took me a very long time to recover. And I still feel like I'm still recovering from some of it. So yeah.
Oh man, my heart is going out to you. I'm sorry I wasn't there to support you along that way. I feel like I wish I had known. And I think that we often say that, right? It's like to our peers and colleagues when we're going through it, it feels so freaking lonely. Um and you know what? I know so many people who have shared similar experiences like yours, who grew too fast, who um just didn't know what they were doing, who felt like this pressure to keep face and be the leader that they thought they were expected to be versus just be honest and get the sufficient support and well-being support to interrupt that downward spiral. So I so appreciate you sharing that, because I know so many of our listeners will relate. And something I was just appreciating as you were sharing, now we don't record the videos for our episodes, it's just audio, but you were smiling through so much of it. And for me, sometimes I feel like we smile as a way to bypass our feelings. But when I was noticing you share it, the thing that I really was present to is how much you've done your work to make peace with your journey and learn from your journey. And say te nota, I've been saying that all week, but you can tell, right? You can tell that you've done the work to learn from the experience. And I guess some of the learnings that I hear that maybe we can expand upon, I love that. I love that practice that your assistant did with us. That's the first lesson I offer in my book, an invitation to go out and ask your network, where they can see you next, what opportunities they would see you thriving in, because it's really vulnerable. And I love that you had someone else do it, right? It's for those of us who don't want to do it for ourselves, we can have our team do it. And it's so risky, being willing to be wrong, right? Being willing to just acknowledge that that you're wrong and that we all screw up, and own that humbly and allow ourselves to be contributed to and supported. And the other thing that I really loved is we get to be wrong and we also get to stand fast in our truth. And I heard you say that you loved working, you thought you needed to work with corporations. And it sounds like there was a part of you that loved working with entrepreneurs. And that that stuck out for me, because that the same is true for me. Everyone told me I needed to work B2C, work with corporations, work with companies. And I've just never wanted that for myself or a company. I love working with individuals. And I also love when the individual reaches out rather than the company, because there's so much more personal investment when someone is hey, I have a vision for how I want my leadership or my company to look different, versus hey, here's my senior manager. She really needs some executive coaching, right? It's a totally different conversation. So I guess those are some of the lessons that I'm hearing, but I'd love for maybe you to expand upon some of those lessons, because it sounds like, you are really clear. There's the whole mindset regime of lessons, but then there's the strategic and tactical. And you speak about both often. And I always appreciate the way you speak about it, because you're it is not just the manifesting and woo-woo people. You actually need to know what you're talking about and do your market research and understand the business strategy. So maybe we can dive in a little bit more there.
Yeah, for sure. Let's do it. And thank you for noticing that. Yeah, I've been through, it took a lot longer to recover. I think I'm 85% recovered. Yeah, some things I lost, I chronically, I have some issues because of that unfortunately, I'm going to live with now, which I had signs and people tell me, watch out for your health. And I was I put my health on the back burner. And so, yeah, my voice changed, my body, my certain issues I have now because of the burnout. And I just want to say yeah, it's not worth growing that fast to, like, at the end of the day, what's life without health, right? What's life if you're not going to be alive or you're sick? Like, what's the point of doing this, right? Like, did we not sign up to do a business because it enables us freedom, because it gives us flexibility, because we can take care of ourselves more, right? And so it's so interesting that, like, I just grew the business to a point at a level that I couldn't handle, and it set me back business wise and personally. And I just want to say that it's not worth that. Like, if you can avoid doing that, I just would not want anyone to go through that. Like, I've lost my mom. I've gone through a lot. I've been divorced. I've gone through a lot in my life. I'm like an expert at reinvention, right? Like, I talk about it. That's what my book's about. But I had never gone through something as difficult as what I went through when I went through that crisis. Like, there was nothing as bad as that. And so I just want to say that, like, it takes a lot longer to recover. And what you want to do is try to avoid getting into a situation like that by being really proactive and smart about how you want to grow your business. What do you really want for yourself? What do you really need? And how do you want this journey to look like? And I know that a lot of us who are spiritual, we're like, well, it will go its own way. I'm going to go with the flow. It's going to be what it's meant to be. But, like, honestly, you also have to have the business strategy hat on too. And feel free. Yeah, we can talk more about that.
Well, I appreciate you naming that. Like, I know before we hit record, you were like, but I just want to make sure we talk about the hard points. Like, we can totally talk about my success journey, and, like, it wasn't without hardship. I had been intending to speak about that after the lessons learned, but if you feel, it feels like maybe the burnout kind of led to the lessons. So maybe we should start here.
Oh, sure.
What felt different about this? Like, it sounds like this experience of breakdown was distinct from some of the others that you mentioned. What made this one so hard?
I would say this one was hard because when you feel like things are going really, really well, you often see yourself as like, okay, this is going really well. Like, I have enough doing well that, like, nothing bad can happen to set me back. Or, like, if something were to happen, it might set me back a little bit, but it can't set me back that far. And I think it's that assumption we have when things are going really well that we don't need to do that work, or we don't need to invest more in ourselves or in our business, or that we have the status quo is risk-free and it's going to everything's going to be fine. I've set things up. In theory, it has to work. And I think we have to assume that, first off, there's a lot of things that we cannot control, and we just have to relinquish that control. What's meant to be, maybe meant to be, but sure, I do believe that there's things that you can make better decisions. I would say it was really just my ability to make decisions. And I think it was sometimes not making decisions. There's the cost of not making decisions. And sometimes I didn't want to make decisions. I didn't feel confident in my own leadership to make decisions. And then when I did make decisions, I didn't always make good decisions. I try to do the best with what I knew at the time. But what I would say is, when things are going really well, or you see that things are going better than, on a pretty good, things are well, like, you've got some clients, you've got things going, you're making some money, you seem pretty happy. Just know that, like, sure, there might be difficult times. We learn from those difficult times. I think going through the burnout has also shaped me into who I've become, and I've become a lot wiser. But also, did it have to be a crisis? Like, it could have been a sprinkle of failures throughout the journey. Why did it all have to come crashing down at one time over a period of 6 months to a year, right? And so I think that ultimately, yeah, I would really just say that knowing what you can tolerate, and, like, knowing what you really want for yourself, and really knowing, yeah, like, I didn't want to be a huge business. I did not want to have a team of 60 people, but I thought that that's what I needed to do, because I thought that's what certain people advised me, that this is the natural next step. But ultimately, I can't blame those people. And for a while, I did blame those people. And I said, well, you advised me to do it this way, or you told me that this was the right thing to do. But I'm the leader. Like, I have to lead, and I have to make the ultimate decision. What do I really want as a business owner, as a person? And I could have said, no, like, that's not the company I want to build, or this is not aligned with my values. But of course, when you're going through burnout, when you're going through so much, it's so hard to see that. Or when you're so busy, because when you're successful, you're also really busy. You're like, well, I can't think about making different investments, or I can't think about, like, changing up what I'm doing. And so I think it's like finding the right balance, but knowing that, like, when things are going really well, that's when you really should be invested and trying to get to that next phase, and really thinking about all the different scenarios of possibilities, all the different assumptions you're making, because chances are things won't just keep working the way they're working, and somebody might not want to work for you anymore. The economy can change, like things just happen. And so you want to make sure that you think about all the possible scenarios and do that scenario planning process so you can identify, well, like, what are the chances of what's the probability that this scenario will work out, and start planning around those different scenarios so that when a crisis or something does happen, you know how to act faster, you know how to make a better decision. And I think that's something we don't really often do, especially as if we're big empaths are like feelers, and we're just going to feel this out and make decisions as we need to make decisions. I do think that there's an element with my CFO, like we do a lot of scenario planning because we have to assume the worst case scenario, or like, what if this doesn't work out that way? And what are other options? And I think thinking about all the different options when you're in a place of abundance and creativity, you can actually come up with lots of ideas and different paths. But once you're in a crisis moment, it's a lot harder to do that. And then you are stuck with whatever you could do at that time. So, yeah.
Mm-hmm. I hear you talking about like the growing from 10 or 15, whatever you were at, to like 60, right? Like, because you thought you should. And I feel like that challenge is something that empathic entrepreneurs struggle with across the board because we're pleasers, right? We inherently want to take advice and be yes people, and we're open to feedback and contribution. And we have to like weigh those gifts of our personality with our intuition and what feels values aligned and true and like inherently on the same page with what we want, with how we want to live our life and run our business and have that experience of work-life balance, which, many of us go into entrepreneurship seeking that time freedom. And then it's often the first thing that goes out the window, right? It's like your 9 to 5 becomes the 5 to 9. And so I really hear that. And I guess like I'm curious, because I don't think I've talked to one guest on the podcast who hasn't mentioned their own experience with burnout. Like, I think that on the journey to becoming like a truly prosperous empath, like you have to break down to break through. Like we all experience burnout. We all have our lessons to really learn and then embody and then integrate into how we operate and how we lead to thrive and prosper and grow. And so I'm curious, like, what were the signs for you? Like, what were the signs for you that you were burning out? How did you know? And how did you break through?
Yeah, thank you. So, you feel it. And I think really listening to yourself, your heartbeat, your breathing, the pain in your body. Like I actually haven't done yoga in years, but like I used to exercise a lot. And because I had paused the gym for like 5 or 6 months because I was so busy, I saw my calendar fill up. I wasn't able to lead an executive assistant to manage me better. Or I didn't really have an executive assistant for part of that time. And so it was like I started working earlier. So like 5 a.m. to 11 p.m. or 12, like I was basically not sleeping very much. If you look at my sleep patterns on my phone, you'll see that 2023, I slept on average like 4 hours and 40 minutes. Like it was pretty bad. In 2022 as well. Like it was just really, really, really bad. Because I wasn't sleeping well, I was ordering Uber Eats a lot or trying to automate my meals, and I wasn't really taking care of myself. I gained a lot of weight. My hair started to fall out. Like my face, you could tell I had that burnout look, and I just was like so exhausted that I couldn't even feel exhausted because I was just on this like, gotta go, gotta keep running on this hamster wheel. But what was I actually doing? Like, what was the value of what I was doing? And I couldn't even see beyond that because I was so busy. And so, I think you feel it in your body a lot, like your shoulders, you feel tense. I try to like binge. I try to like fix it by going to the spa or a massage here and there, but like it just came right back because I was band-aiding and I wasn't fixing the root of the problem. And so the burnout, like I shied away. I didn't even talk, like me and you weren't in touch, right? Like I know you asked me, I probably ignored your message about getting on your podcast because I was like, I can't handle these things. I can't even show up to be myself. Like I was so embarrassed about how I knew I was not showing up with the right mindset and the right energy. And it was just, it's so deep that like, there's just nothing you can do to act or pretend to be authentic. Like it's just, you feel like you lose part of your identity. It's like, you just feel not yourself. but you're not even fully aware of that all the time. And it's just like not really pleasant to be around. You go into a deep scarcity mindset, which totally sucks after, being someone that killed it and was successful and like on paper and even outside people were like, oh, Saleema, you're so successful, whatever it was. But like ultimately, like you don't want to share that because you're like, if I share that and I haven't been like gotten to the other side, like, is that going to be, it's not going to be a hero story. It's not going to be a quest or like, it's not going to be, what is the upside of it? And I was like, you just feel like you're in this tunnel, this like black hole or this, like you can't see the light and you just want to see the light, but you're just scraping along the bottom for a very long time. And I think that assuming that, okay, it's been so bad, it's just got to go up. No, like I had to do a lot of work to like get to a better place and feel confident in showing up and being a good friend, being a good partner, being a good leader, being a good everything to people. I just couldn't do it.
How does it look different now? Like, how do you care for yourself different? How are you leading different?
Yeah. So how it's changed is that first off, giving yourself self-love and time and care and patience and knowing that it just takes time to recover. Surrounding yourself with people that can uplift you or you can lift them up as well. I would say the most important thing was solving. So I actually brought on a few fractional executives to help me in areas. Some were amazing, some were not, failed or it was not as helpful, but it was ultimately my decision. And I know now how I would hire differently, but I had an incredible COO who stepped in and she was a good friend of mine and she saw what I was going through and she stepped in and just took over a lot of things that I just didn't know how to handle. And it was a lot of cleaning up the mess. Like it cost us significantly to clean up the mess. It cost us a lot more than the profit that we had from growing to 7 figures. It cost us a lot more to clean up that mess because of a lot of things I can't even talk about, but a lot of things happened that we were not expecting. And that those are things like, when you're at a level like that and you've got employees or, you've got people that you got to take care of. I'm talking like legal, finance, like all HR, like all the things that you didn't want to have to deal with as a prosperous empath. Like you like want to just do your thing. You want to be a visionary. You want to work with your dream clients. You want to feel great. You want to be in community, but as you grow your business, you will need people and you can't scale on your own. And you want to get the right people, and the right people you get through is by knowing what your values are first, your personal values. And when you know your personal values, then you can define what are your company values. And then and align everything in your business around your values. And so the clients that you pick, you want to screen and say no to most people and yes to the ones that are values aligned. You want to say no to most people that want to join your team unless they're values aligned. And so saying no to a lot of stuff, not just the people, but like no to stuff that's not aligned with your values or your vision. I was saying yes to too much. And I started saying one piece of advice from one of my fractionals was saying no more. He's like, you need to say no to more stuff and pick 3 things to focus on every day. And I would say that, that changed things because I was trying to say yes to everything, business development, conferences. And that was another thing that led to my burnout was I was not focused. And I think that's one thing we struggle with is we struggle with focus. We have lots of ideas. We want to do lots of things. We want to say yes to a lot of things. Say yes to a lot of people, but we have to know like where we stand and how priority is it? Like, can it be a yes, a no? Can it be a later? A lot of times things can be a later. And so now I just say no to a lot more stuff and it feels great. I'm like, you know what? Like I can say no to a lot of stuff because at the end of the day, if the person loves me or they want to, spend time with me or they understand or they, they'll get it. And if they don't, then probably wasn't worth, having that conversation anyways. And so I really think just really knowing your values and where you stand to make sure that the business is something that you want to do. So you wake up energized and not like exhausted. And you look at your schedule and now I have a rule, no more than 4 hours of meetings a day. This is my last hour, like making sure that I have something like an executive assistant that can manage me upwards. Because a lot of us aren't good at managing ourselves, but making sure you know how to manage your assistant to manage you in a way that works for you. So I would say, yeah, in a very different place. Aligning my organization and myself by my values has changed everything. We're in a much better place. We're back on track. And our revenue shot right back up after we got aligned on values and started really getting, then this is more of a business thing, but really knowing what you offer that's unique, that's repeatable, that only you can do in a way that you do it. And there's got to be some innovation or some kind of uniqueness to it. And that makes it sticky. That's niche. And a lot of times we're scared of saying, no, we want to work with everyone. We can help everyone. But no, actually, when I was getting on calls with everyone and only a few people were actually converting, I was like, why you don't need, it shouldn't be that hard. Business is actually not that hard. And when you've done it a few times, you just need certain pieces of the formula, right? You need some cash in, you need some um, amazing work being delivered, you need great people, you need culture, you need certain things. And when you have those pieces, the business just works. When you have product market fit or message market fit, you got the price right, you've got, the right articulation of value, like it just sells, things just work, and you have the delivery set up, you have a way to think about how are you going to grow long term, and you go through phases, and all of that sorted itself out when I got aligned on my vision and values and communicated that with the team.
I was appreciating watching your hands as you were talking, because it was like, it just felt so strategic and organized and I'm just appreciating how you fill those gaps for your clients, right? Like it's totally coming to life over here. I want to talk, this may feel like a little bit of a deviation, but it just feels really relevant. I want to talk about generosity, because for me, like you are such a generous entrepreneur. It's something I've appreciated about you from day one. And I think it's something that we really need to learn how to manage responsibly as we grow and scale. So, how have you learned to manage your generous spirit?
Yeah, that's a great question. And that's one thing that during burnout, I lost that. I was generous in some ways, but it was kind of becoming more transactional because I felt like because I lost myself in that journey and I didn't feel like myself, and I wasn't doing the Saleema thing of, connecting people and just sharing and doing things and whatever and speaking and building community. It was a very dark place, but yeah, for most of my career, or at least most of my journey as an entrepreneur, other than those very early stages when I was isolated in Italy, I was very much about giving. And I think it's just partly who I am, what I've learned from my mother, right? My mother was an entrepreneur. She was a Montessori teacher, and she was very giving. She would do all kinds of stuff for her kids. And even the parents would do all kinds of stuff, take me to my extracurriculars and all that, and bring snacks for the kids. And it was just a culture of generosity. And it's partly also just being Indian, I think, like Indian descent. I think that there's just that kind of hospitality or that like generosity that we have in our culture. And so yeah, I think for me, it was really just, for me, I just like giving without expecting anything in return. And I did that a lot of my career because I think it just came from my passion to serve others. And I truly think that if you're in entrepreneurship for yourself, then I think the best thing you should do is to be a contractor or do something else. But if you really want to build a business that's going to make an impact, it is about serving others. It has to be about serving your customers. If it's just for yourself, it's not going to work, because you have to think about what is your customer thinking. There's got to be something for them that they're going to get so much value, not just mediocre and not just good. It's got to be great. Your products, your service, your programs, they've got to be, you've got to really build something. It's not about doing something extraordinary, is what my Harvard professor would say. It's really about doing simple things in an extraordinary way. And so think about how you can deliver something with those surprise and delights and extra things that make it special. Maybe it's just you checking in with your customers every now and then and giving them a phone call, showing them that you care, sending them a little gift. Or Kat, I know you used to send, or at least you send those holiday cards and those handwritten letters in the mail. Like it's about doing those extra little things that make you sticky, make you memorable, but it's got to be something that's authentic to you. Like I'm not a snail mail. Like I don't send out mail to anyone really, other than I used to send books out, but finding a way that actually works for you, because the other person's going to feel, does it feel authentic, or does it just feel like, you're trying to do something to get something in return? And I think and if their values align, then they're not going to feel like you're taking advantage or you're trying to do something to get something. It's got to just really come from a place where you love giving. And for me, it's actually like, I haven't done a podcast like this in so long, Kat. Like I was saying no and postponing everything for a very long time since during that burnout journey. So now I feel like this is who I am and this is how I want to show up and be authentic, be myself, be vulnerable. Some people are going to stick, some people aren't, and that's okay. I'm going to focus on the people who do align. And I would say it's got to be about being of service to others. How can you really leverage your gifts, your expertise, who you are, your identity to serve other people? And when you serve other people, just trust that the universe will take care of you. And that part I still am very spiritual about, because it does happen. Like somehow we always make payroll, right? Somehow something always happens, and having the right mindset, like things do manifest. Of course, you do need the business structure. You do need all the strategies and all the other stuff. But essentially, yeah, like I truly do believe when you're doing your purpose and you're giving, it's hard. I know it's hard because oftentimes we're thinking about revenue, we're thinking about getting enough income in, getting our financial wealth up, but really there's this framework that I learned at Harvard. I talk about it in my LinkedIn newsletters and my social media bit. It's called the holistic wealth matrix. And a lot of times we're focused so much on just building that financial capital and getting money in the door, but really how that happens is really strongly building your emotional capital. So your mindset and your resilience. It's about building your social capital, your relationships. It's really about deepening your relationships and investing in the right relationships that are going to help you, where you can also be of help to them. And then your intellectual capital. How can you become a better expert, or how can you be better at what you do? Because there's a lot of competition out there, and we really need to understand where we stand in the market. What position are we taking? And so knowing your market, who's out there, co-opetition's big. So like collaborating with your competition is another really smart thing to do, because what's yours is yours. I talk to a lot of people who help entrepreneurs, but we have different audiences slightly, and that's okay. And we'll attract the right audience, and really being in that abundance mindset is so important. And it's hard. It's hard. Usually we get stuck with the scarcity mindset because we're scared. Well, what if that could be my client? Or what if, I don't want to share my network, because that's like, and I never really thought about like, I guess, that like someone's going to steal someone from my network or whatever. Cause I was like, what's mine is mine. It's going to come. And that's fine. I trust that. And I just think that like, as an empath, or like, prosperous empath, as you talk about, like just trusting that what's yours is yours. It's going to come. But you have to give, and just give, and not in the spirit of giving to get, but just give. And it may not be from the same person. And that's not like, hey, let's give this and get something back. And what can I do for you? It's like, how can I be of help? And don't expect that someone else is going to help you, but people will help you when you're in that spirit of generosity. And I see it a lot as we move from 5 to 6 figures. And when we move to 7 figures very quickly, the community of people in the 7 and 8 figures is very different, because what's gotten them there is the social capital. It's their relationships. It's their ability to give and be helpful to other people and connect and make introductions and be part of many communities. That's gotten them to where they are and helps sustain them and help them grow to where they want to get to. And I think that's something I try to encourage in our programs. I haven't talked a lot about what we do at my company, but that's something that we do, is get our clients to go on a 100 coffee challenge and actually go and meet people, meet each other. And it's really about deepening those relationships. I think that's something we're so obsessed with, growth and making the revenue that we need to make. And really, we should be more focused on being focused on having a good strategy and executing on that strategy. And if we do that, the growth just happens and the financial piece all gets sorted out.
Saleema, it's wild that you haven't shared your burnout story before, because it's so beautifully distinguished and clear. And it feels like you've really transformed it. Like you may still have like a scratchy voice, but like I'm just really present to how much healing you've done to get to this place. I noticed I'm curious, like what feels like what has you feeling ready to share it now? Because I think that's really relevant for folks. Like, how do we make peace with our process to actually be able to share it authentically? Because there's nothing as like refreshing as being with an authentic, embodied entrepreneur, right? It's like
Yeah, well, one thing I learned from you, and I use this phrase a lot, is from your masterminds you used to hold in person in 2019 before COVID, was like you would ask us when you facilitated to lean into our discomfort. And that's something that I encourage our clients to do. That's something I think about myself. And I honestly wasn't totally ready for the podcast right now. I was going to be like, oh, Kat, can we do it like later in the year? But then you were like, well, I'm going to, have a baby and be gone for a while. And I was like, you know what? I just really want to connect with her before she becomes a mom, before she goes on this journey. And like, this might be the good time. It's a little uncomfortable. I'm not like, maybe like I said, 85% there. I'm not totally ready to share it, but I'm like, I'll try and see how I could feel all the feelings. And it's part of, I think it's going to help me heal by sharing it. And it's just, it's just part of who I am at this point, and it's something that I accept and I have to embrace. And I hope that sharing it will help other people so they don't have to go through what I went through, and maybe they'll be able to take some nuggets. Cause I think I didn't understand what burnout was when I went through it, but I can say that it's made me a lot wiser. And and now when I'm at Harvard and learning things, I'm like, I can feel the pain of that. Like, I understand that because I've been there. But I'm also investing in myself and learning things that I'm like, oh, I don't need to make that mistake because now I'm learning this and I can implement this and not have to go through that. But again, life is just all about that, right? It's just being aware. When you're aware of yourself and what you really want, what your values are. Like, I think now I'm super clear. I don't think I'll definitely go through other crises. I'll definitely go through other things, but I think burnout, I wouldn't say I'm totally burnout proofed. I sometimes do get busy still because I love what I do, but I don't think I'll ever have to go through that again because it was so bad that I learned so much that I'm like, I just can't let that happen again. So yeah.
Well, I'm so glad that you learned the lessons so that you have more to give, right? It's like, I think that learning how to manage and leverage your generosity is like so key to the journey of a prosperous empath. And I love hearing how you've learned to optimize your spirit, right? Because we all benefit, right? So thank you for today. It's been so lovely sharing this space with you. As we wrap, I'd love for you to share the resource or tip that's really supported you in becoming the prosperous empath you are.
Yeah, thank you. I'd like to share actually my professor, Francis Frey. I'm doing a Harvard program called Owner President Management. It's a 2-year program for entrepreneurs. And it's interesting. I'm actually, my professor, Francis Frey, she is, one of the top management business thinkers in the world. And she talks a lot about building trust and empathy. And she's got this book called Unleashed. Highly recommend it. Probably has a few of what I learned in my Harvard lectures in there. And it's really about not just building trust, but rebuilding trust. And what you need to build trust is what she calls the trust triangle, and having a mix of logic, empathy, and authenticity. Usually we're strong at like one of them, maybe 2 of them, but we're usually weak on one of them. So if you're strong at logic, chances are you're probably weak at empathy and maybe authenticity. So it's interesting because knowing where you're strong, but then knowing how to fill those gaps, because building trust, especially if you're strong in empathy and knowing how to work with logic and authenticity so that you can build or rebuild trust. I think that's one of the most important things that we underestimate when it comes to business. Because at the end of the day, business is relationships. And like for me and my burnout, like I was trying to hide from my clients. I was scared to show up, and I was trying to replace myself too prematurely before I was ready to. And I would say that the trust building, being authentic, like when I started showing up to my clients and being like, hey, like I was burnt out and I went through this, it changed the game. Like authenticity really rebuilt that trust in many of them. And it just created relationships that are thriving now. And so I would just highly recommend reading Frances' book. She's got a podcast and with her partner, Ann Morris, and she's got just great content. So highly recommend following Frances Frey.
Frances Frey, Unleashed.
Yes.
We'll link it in the show notes. Saleema, thank you so much. It's been such a pleasure.
Thank you, Kat.
Thank you so much for listening today to this episode of the Prosperous Empath Podcast with me, Catherine Wood. Make sure you subscribe and leave a review so you don't miss an episode, and so more empaths just like you and me can find the show. As a thank you, each month, one lucky reviewer will receive a 60-minute coaching session with a member of our Unbounded Potential team. You can find all the show notes and bonus resources over at unbounded-potential.com. Thank you so much for listening and locking arms with me to bring empathy and prosperity back into the world of business.